Welcome to Coffee and the Bull.
I said, the thing in the back of my brain where I was like, I know I'm about to hurt your feelings if you don't stop. And, she didn't realize where I was at in my mind because, I'm stressed out, she's stressed out, and she kept arguing with me. And I said something that it was probably the most hateful thing I'd ever said to her. I wound up walking out of the house, and I had every intention of hopping in the truck and leaving. I wasn't leaving like, going to get in a divorce or anything, but I planned on just leaving and getting out of the thing. And I remember having this thought process. I was like, if I get in this truck and I leave, if I go down this driveway, when I come back, it's not going to be the same when I come back.
Right.
And it wasn't until about a year ago, me and her were revisiting that argument where it's like, hey, look, this is where I was in that. And she said no. She said if you'd have went down that driveway, she said it was 100%. It was going to be over with. I had no clue that I'd reached it to that point, and so that was a time period where I did not separate work from home.
Right.
And I would say that for the small business owners, for the guys, you run small trucking companies or land clearing or even grass cutting, man, whatever you're doing, as whether it be a side gig or even a full-time job, if you're working for yourself, it's very, very hard to put that divider in. It's very hard to block out that chunk of time. But man, you got if it means taking that phone and putting it in a bedroom and shutting the door to that bedroom for 5 or 6 hours, you got to do that, man. Because it's you might be able to grow your business, but honestly, it's going to wind up suffering in the end of it because you're going to be too burnt out. And that's. Family for a lot of guys represents that chance to recharge, that chance to, if you could imagine being an axe, it's a chance to sharpen that axe so that you're more productive when you do go to work. Because the last thing you want is, hey, I'm stressed out at work. I go to cut this if you got a grass cutting company, you're stressed out at home because, hey, you just had an argument with your wife because you're never at home. Your grass is high, but you're going to go cut other people's grass.
Right.
And then, you go cut their grass where you're not paying attention. You hit gravel, send rocks through somebody's window. Now they're throwing a fit. And they're mad because you already went up $5 for the cut because, gas and everything only doubled over the last couple of years, but you went up $5 a cut. And so it's just one of the things where it's like just you start having those where it just keeps losing and losing and losing. You've got to find a way. You got to have taken block off time where you say, hey, I've got to recharge. I've got to spend time with my family, and I've got to focus on them. Not just be present. You've actually got to be part of their life.
Right.
So I hope that answered Seth's question.
So, Tap Mom 32 brings up it's tough when the kids ask in the middle of the argument because they overheard you arguing.
Yeah.
And I'll say
that usually ends with "Shut up and get out of here. You're not supposed to be listening."
Mind your business. Why are you even in here right now?
Right.
So I'll say that through my divorce, the only time my kids were ever present for an argument was the day that I actually kicked my ex-wife out of the house. And I can talk about that now that situation's over. But essentially, we were getting divorced. But for a month, I had to pretend that everything was okay. That I didn't know she was planning to like run off with my kids and go into another county area or parish and file for divorce and stuff. And so the day that they came and they served her everything and said, hey, not only are you evicted, we have this emergency custody order, we have a protective order, because we know based on the messages you're sending to your affair, you're planning to pack up and leave with these children, and we're not going to let that happen. And that was the only argument my kids have ever seen. Thankfully, my baby, she's way too young to remember any of it. But my son kind of looked up and in front of her mother, and he goes, Daddy, how come Mommy has to leave? And I had to have that hard conversation that I had not intended to have with them right there in front of her and say, hey, sometimes grown-ups, we don't get along, and it's best that we just go separate ways for a little while. And up until probably a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, he had the hope that maybe Mommy and Daddy would get back together, which I can tell you right now that God himself could tell me that would save humanity, and sorry, I'm watching this world burn. But it was a topic that was tough for me to give, and that's where I started to reevaluate the conversation levels that I have with my son, because we got to have conversations. There's divorces, there's getting fired from work. There's I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills because I got a good job and whatever, but I'm not making enough money. You got to have these conversations with your kids at age appropriate levels, which is again what our topic this evening is geared around. Is having these conversations and not just saying, "Hey, get out. You can't. We don't need you in here right now." Right. And so, like for me, we've discussed it before. I grew up in a house where my parents didn't argue. Mm-hmm. We knew we weren't rich. We knew we didn't have all the money in the world to go on lavish stuff. We knew all year round. My mom would collect soda cans, and we would crush them up, and we would take them down to the recycling place to get money. You found change walking into Walmart, you put it in your pocket and you give it to Mom when we got to the house. And she had jugs and she would sort it all out. And a week before we were to go on our vacations, Mom would, take it all down to the bank and she'd get cash and that's how we do our vacations. Right. And, I look back on it now and it kind of made me laugh because, as a kid, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. Now that I'm an adult, I realized just how poor we were. Like we were in a borrowed, used pop-up camper that barely fit in the bed of my daddy's pickup. That made my daddy's pickup not run very well. And we would be laid down on the back. Which, by the way, I don't know how the 80s and 90s people survived because we were in the back of a camper that I know if we had wrecked.
So, yeah, we had a Pontiac Bonneville. Yeah, that my dad had. I don't know what year it was. It's the ugly ones. Yeah, it was one of those. And I remember the seat belts in the back didn't work. And so it had obviously three. You had the shoulder strap, just a lap band for the middle seat,
right,
and a shoulder strap on the other side. Well, on the passenger side, the shoulder strap belt didn't the latch didn't work, which I don't know if you know this. I know you were a mechanic for a minute. When it comes to seat belts, if the latch doesn't work, the seat belt doesn't work.
Right.
And so my parents' approach to it, because we grew up super poor, and was we took the lap band from the middle seat, sent it through the shoulder lap, and then back around to the other one. So you stretch it out as far as you go. But not only that, so there was 6 of us. So the front of the car had, obviously the driver was my dad's seat, the passenger was my mom's seat. All 4 of us kids were in the back seat. So you got 4 kids
sharing 2 seat belts.
We had, if you sat on the driver's side, you got the seatbelt to yourself. But if you sat in any of those other seats, all 3 of you shared 2 seatbelts that are hooked into one latch.
He's touching me.
Yeah, I would have loved for a cop to pull us over and be like, "What God. In the world?"
Well, do you remember the station wagons?
Mm-hmm. Lay on the backrest,
bro. I remember me and my kid's sister used to have to sit in the very back of the station wagon where the things popped up in the middle,
right?
And it was like 2 bench seats with a seatbelt each. And I knew I wasn't but like 6 or 7, and I was like, I'm dead. This is not safe.
See, I never thought about that. We always took, once you got going down the road, it was okay. You had to start off with the seatbelts. But about the time they hit a highway or an interstate for a while,
right?
Oh yeah, y'all can unbuckle your seatbelts. We'd unbuckle, climb down on the floorboard, put your head on the actual seat, and just go to sleep.
Right. God, I wish. No, I remember growing up poor and my parents never having conversations about it. There was never a hey, it's not that daddy doesn't make enough money, it's that we just have a crap load of kids and, we didn't learn that we should stop at some point, And so it put me at a disadvantage, honestly, when I became an adult, because looking at my parents, when they would have a conversation, it was, my mom saying, this is how it's going to be, and my dad saying, yes, dear, and that's how it was. There was no discussion about what my dad wanted, what my dad thought, In his mind, the way that his reality worked is, I'm going to get up at the ass crack of dawn, I'm going to go to work until the sun's done working, and then I'm going to come home, I'm going to eat my dinner, I'm going to shower, and I'm going to go to bed. And that was his mentality was, I provide financially. And getting him to, my dad went to 1 baseball game, he went to 1 football game, and that was it. you know, and he went to my high school graduation.
Right.
You know, other things like, now my kid sister, that was his favorite growing up, so he went to all of her things. But it was, I do enough for you. I'm doing exactly what I have to do for you. And it wasn't like a negative thing. Like, he wasn't proud, you know, saying he wasn't proud of me or that he didn't support me. It was, I'm doing everything that I can, and if I stop doing this, I can't do for you what you need. And so as an adult, when I go into it, I would previously go into relationships with that mentality that all I got to do is go to work, bring home the paycheck, and that's it. You know, kids came along and it was, okay, I got to go to work. I got to provide for the kids. And when I get home, you know, especially when I was in the military, like, I was exhausted.
Right.
You know, you get up every morning, and people don't think about it, but the military is the easiest life you could ever have. It really is. In the long run of things, okay? Mm-hmm. And I say that because here we have jobs, right? And our jobs say, this is your uniform, this is what you come to work in, you're going to work from this time to this time, and if you work over that, you're going to get paid overtime, and if you work a holiday, you're going to get paid time and a half. Military's not like that.
Right.
You work 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Yeah, that's right. If they call you and say, hey, you're coming in Saturday, the option is yes, sir. There is no, like, I'm not doing it, or you're going to pay me X amount. Like, that's not there. So for me, it was, I get up at the butt crack of dawn. I go do my PT, you know, physical training, and then do whatever the training is throughout the day. And sometimes you get off 4 o'clock. Sometimes you get off 10 o'clock. And it was an easier life, and I didn't have to have crazy conversations with...
Garbo's watching.
Sorry. Hey, Garbo. I don't know if your kid told you, but we did read book 1. I read book 1. Mike doesn't know how to read, but I'm working on book 2. I'll let you know how I feel about that when I finish it. That's right. Rubbing it in that you don't read. So, you classy son of a bee. So the conversations that I would have with, like, my first ex-wife and stuff like that, it was real simple. Like, this is my schedule for the week. Mm-hmm. It is subject to change. It will change. I don't know why I just gave you my schedule. And play with my son and go to bed. And there was no questions. And now, being on the civilian side of it, seeing how that mentality is not good for a relationship, it's not good for having a healthy outcome with life, I've had to change everything about it, and I've had to have uncomfortable conversations with significant others to be like, hey, I don't like this. I don't want to do this. And now with the kids, especially now that, you know, I'm divorced and, you know, try to date and everything else, the kids are going to have questions, and I don't want to lie to them.
Right.
But I have to have appropriate conversations, you know, and it becomes a challenge when you have to step into roles that you aren't necessarily geared for because nobody ever showed you those roles, you know?
Well, I know one of the things that I've got is, when I have a day at work, and it's just one of the things where it weighs on you, and, you know, you can't sleep. And it's not even just law enforcement geared. Like, you know, we deal with people all the time who's got to call 911 because they witness a wreck, you know, and I don't know if I know not everybody gets to experience it, but if you can ever track down some of the civilians who have to call in major wrecks and explain that, hey, this person's hanging out the windshield, and this person, I think they went flying in the air, but I don't really know because in their brain that doesn't make sense. We know they got ejected. Like, those are traumatic things that they've got to witness. Yep. You know, I remember a very couple of years ago now, or a year and a half ago, worked a very massive pileup on the interstate, you know, and several people died. But
what was that, 150 something vehicle crash?
It was a lot. There was a lot of people involved.
Yeah.
But there were, I'd say, dozens of people who witnessed a handful of people enter the afterlife, and you know, those people have to find a way to process that.
Right.
But they've all, you know, I remember one of the guys, he had his daughter in the truck with him, and they were on the way to the airport, and she's very young, and he's trying to explain to her what just happened in front of him, but he's still trying to process it too.
Right.
And it's like, you've got to find a way to have those conversations with your kids where, hey, I'm stressed out. I don't have all the answers. I don't have, I don't know why I feel the way I do right now. And there's nothing wrong with explaining that to your kids. Is, hey, I don't have the answers. I don't know what's going on. I'm working through some stuff, but so I might be grouchy for a little bit. I'm not mad at you. Like, I've had to have that conversation with my son because I snapped at him, a couple of days ago. And granted, he deserved to get his butt chewed a little bit.
Did he?
He didn't deserve it at the level that I gave it to him. And so I had to call him over. I'm like, look, I'm a little stressed out. I've got some stuff going on, and I'm not mad at you, but understand that hey, you're doing all this stuff. You don't really know everything that's going on. Right. And now granted, he's yes sir, and he acts like he understands it. I don't know that he does all the way.
Right.
But if I just leave it as, hey, I snapped, he'll get over it. He deserved to get yelled at anyway, and I move on. He's just going to think, man, Dad's being a jerk,
Right.
And that's just going to follow, and that compounds. I mean, look at how many times everybody wants to blame everything on, oh, my dad didn't hug me enough or my dad yelled at me. Well, your dad had a lot of crap going on, and again, nothing against moms. But your dad had a lot of stuff going on that you don't know about,
Right.
I could only imagine how stressed my mom and dad had to be. Either one, they were stressed, or two, they were the most oblivious people in the world.
Four kids plus two adopted.
Well, they adopted two later, but I remember back in the early '90s, my dad wasn't making very much money at all. My mom was doing what she could. It wasn't nothing against him. His career, it just wasn't paying that well.
Right.
And I remember they went we would go to car dealerships, right? And if for whatever reason, they thought it was a good idea, let's bring all the kids. Mainly because nobody would babysit our bad.
I was going to say, let's be real. Could you be trusted the four of you alone?
Yeah, it's a lot to ask somebody, but hey, can you babysit all four of my little hellions?
Especially when the ringleaders are you and your brother, Matt.
But so you take and they would bring all four of us to a car dealership, and it was not when obviously everything's electronic. They did it over the phone, so it took all freaking day,
right,
just to be told no, this is not going to be a good deal,
right.
And so you would spend day after day after day after day. But meanwhile, we're taking and we're like, let's test drive all these cars. I didn't give a crap about price or didn't know what a note was or interest rate. And the interest rate was how interested I was in the car,
Right.
And so we're hopping in. I mean, we look like the National Lampoon's just redneck.
Right. Those car salesmen are like, please break something so that we can make your parents buy that vehicle.
Right. Well, it had to be a salesman's worst nightmare because you've got kids bouncing around everywhere. You've got it was back whenever they're playing hardball with negotiating back and forth,
Right.
And so you got to deal with that stress on top of it. And then my dad wasn't making a lot of money, so the approval process is not going to be an easy
one.
Right. And I can't tell you how many. We'd be bouncing around through all these different it was vans and all this other stuff, and it's just. It was the most miserable time not understanding what's going on and be like, why can't we just buy this thing and get out of here? Kids don't understand everything that's going on. I didn't understand what stress my dad was under because obviously we're at a car dealership. It's not because we want to go get a brand spanking new car. It's because we need a freaking car.
Right.
My mom needs something to get us to school or get us to the grocery store or whatever. And so I remember I didn't care about it. So if I didn't care about it when I was a kid, why would my kids care about it now?
Right.
And so it's one of the things where he didn't have a conversation saying, hey, obviously we're poor. He told us we were poor. Every time we go to get clothes or whatever, no, you knew what racks to shop from,
right.
And which ones not to. But that translates now to, when I'm in the father role and I obviously experience the stressors and things that you go through as a parent. Now it's okay. How can I've got to equip my son for later on in life,
right.
And so obviously I don't want to tell him, hey, Daddy's kind of stressed out. We don't have enough money to pay all the bills,
right.
So we're probably going to get your PlayStation 5 repossessed or whatever, Obviously you can't go have that type of conversation with him because you don't need the kid thinking we're about to not have a roof overhead. I'm not in a spot, unless somebody wants to donate a bunch of money because you feel bad for me. I'm not in a spot that, that we're about to lose our house or anything like that. But it's one of those things where you can't. Obviously, we all have financial stress. You can't bring that on and just dump that onto your kids.